They always say there are Democrats, Republicans, and appropriators. And now we have to say there are Democrats, Republicans, appropriators, and unfortunately a bigger umbrella called bigots.
Democratic Representative Mark Pocan is joining in on the frustration that the Democratic Party is apparently feeling in their debates over a new government spending bill. Now they need to pass that legislation before September. Otherwise, the government will experience yet another shutdown. But Republicans, according to the Democratic Party, have hijacked the process, especially in the House Appropriations Committee, where the spending bill is being mired in conservative culture war battles. So apparently the push on these social issues, and this is surprising to me because I feel like all government does these days is engage in culture war issues. But apparently when it comes to the House Appropriations Committee, this is pretty unusual. Usually they stick to what the Appropriations Committee is supposed to stick to, passing legislation that funds the government, that prevents things from shutting down. But apparently, of the 12 bills moving through the House appropriations process in recent months, policy writers targeting agency diversity, equity and inclusion initiatives have appeared in 11, and that's according to tracking from the Human Rights Campaign. Language seeking to ban discrimination against people who do not believe in gay marriage appeared in 10, and 8 sought to block funding for pride flags and gender inclusive care. 3 took aim at drag shows. So I want to get to some of the specifics of these provisions that are being offered up by the Republican Party in the House Appropriations Committee in just a moment. But Cenk, I think that this is the inevitable outcome of what we've been seeing in Congress for years now. Like the fact that, the Appropriations Committee has been different. Like they've kind of stayed out of all of this stuff. Is laughable to me. If that is true, it is unsurprising to me that it's now come to this.
Well, I think that what Pocan's referring to is normally they just pass all this stuff in the middle of the night because they don't want you to look too closely at the stuff that they're passing, because almost everything that Congress does funnels money to their donors. So normally it's like quiet affairs. Oh yeah, we agree, everything to the corporate donors. You got the same donors, let's go, let's go, let's go. But now, for 2 reasons, Republicans are bringing a spotlight to this, and that's what the cultural wars are. They're a spotlight. So the minute you say, like, here, I'll give you one example. They want to ban pride flags being put up in buildings, the American government paying for any pride flags. What does it cost, $130? And we're having a conversation over this? The Defense Department can't account for half their budget every year. So they're like, $400 billion missing every year. Nah, it's not a problem. The pride flag's $130. I was misspending the money. No, when you do that, what you're saying is, look here, look here, look here, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why the Democrats are upset for 2 reasons. One, they're purposely targeting people in the LGBTQ community, spreading hatred towards them. That is very true, in my opinion, and that's why I think Pocan is part of that community. He's justifiably upset for his voters, for himself, etc. And then the second thing is they're like, stop making everybody pay attention to this. But the Republicans are doing a second trick, which we're going to talk more about now. Look over here, do not look over here, where we have massive spending cuts that are going to screw over the average American.
And I think it's also important to emphasize what Democrats have decided to focus on as the problem here, while ignoring another giant problem in what Republicans are doing. And I think you'll get what I mean in just a moment. But first, you mentioned the flags. There were other provisions that Republicans demanded be included in this government funding bill. So for instance, the bill that would fund the Interior Department, including the national parks, would prohibit spending on eco-grief counseling and critical race theory. Because the Interior Department is now doing critical race theory and would prohibit any non-official flags from flying over the department's buildings in response to GOP complaints about pride flags. Look, honestly, I'm tired of the flag debates. Like, I think that's fine. I don't care about the flags, okay? But I think Cenk is right in noting that this is mostly a symbolic effort meant to direct more negative attention toward the LGBTQ community, right? This is mostly their attempt to send a message about what their priorities are.
Okay, I gotta jump in. Sorry, Anna, I'm gonna jump in real quick on that. Because look, guys, the Republicans might even be right on some of these issues. So I don't like the gay pride flag. Should that be flown in government buildings? I have no opinion on it, right? So I always use my own ethnicity. Like if they said, "Oh, we want to fly a Muslim flag," I'd be like, "Why? Why? I don't know. Let's just keep the American flag. It's fine." Eco-grief counseling. I don't know what that is.
I don't need that.
Okay, but whatever it is, I'm against it. Okay, and so I'm just being honest with you. Does Interior Department do any critical race theory? Probably not. Republicans make up half the stuff that they say, right? But that's not, whether you agree or don't agree, you could put that in a standalone bill and we could have a vote over it, right? I'm not saying you can't vote on that, but they're putting it in the appropriations bill to gum up the works and force more spending cuts because they're going to shut down the government at the end of September to try to get those spending cuts. And these are all both a distraction and a way of shutting the government, having an excuse to shut down the government because they were worried about $13 in pride flags.
Now, here's where I think Pocan certainly has a good point to make, and it has to do with what the GOP is looking to defund. So let's go to graphic 5 here. The transportation markup went into recess 3 times over an emotionally charged, hours-long debate of an amendment that would strip funding from 3 LGBTQ organizations. So I wanted to look into what those organizations are because I was curious. I mean, does the Republican side have a point in wanting to maybe take some funding away? Just because it's a pro-LGBTQ organization doesn't mean it's necessarily a good organization to put public money toward. But I side with Democrats on this issue entirely. Okay, so here's what the organizations are. So the GOP amendment was pitched by Representative Tom Cole. He's a Republican from Oklahoma. And Cole's amendment would cut funding to 3 LGBTQ focused community centers, okay? 1 in Massachusetts and 1 in Pennsylvania. These centers provide counseling services, networking and social events like art exhibits and other services, and also like job training opportunities. It is good to have these organizations provide support to local communities, especially when it comes to things like job training. Like, what do you have against that? Representative Brendan Boyle, who requested $1.8 million in funding for the William Way Community Center in his district, described it as a historic building that has been a beacon of hope and support for Philadelphia's LGBTQ community for decades. It has provided vital sources or social services, including employment counseling, meals for seniors, and many other resources. The Republican amendment would also nix 2 other Democrat requested earmarks. Pennsylvania Representative Christy Holohan would lose about $1 million, $970,000 earmark. She secured for an LGBTQ center in Reading, while Massachusetts Representative Ayanna Pressley would lose $850,000 in dedicated funding. Her district would receive for a group that supports housing for older Americans in the LGBTQ community. So going after the funding for these groups or these organizations, I think is the worst part of what the GOP is doing here. And Pocan called them out during that emotional meeting and debate. I want to show you just a snippet of that.
Think about me as your colleague. I told you the story about a plowing guy. Okay, fine, the guy doesn't want to plow my driveway. Whatever. But did I share with you when I used to get the article when I first ran for office where they wrote "dead" over your face and sent it to you in the mail? Or the time that when I wasn't out yet, left a gay bar and 2 people followed me and beat me with a baseball bat till I was bloodied and unconscious and called me a. This is what you guys do by introducing amendments like this, taking away from people's earmarks. Is absolutely below the dignity of Congress and certainly the Appropriations Committee.
And look, I agree with him on that. And so remember, 2 can play at this game. If Republicans are gonna play this game where they try to take away funding for organizations that help local communities just because they don't like that these organizations help a group of people that are marginalized, they wanna continue marginalizing them. Democrats can turn around and start doing away with earmarks that Republicans want in their communities, right? So that's just something to keep in mind as this game continues to get played. And what gets lost in the debate and lost in the conversation, what I'm not seeing Democrats call Republicans out on, is that while they're hyper-focused on the culture war stuff, the The worst thing Republicans are doing is they want to cut funding on pretty much everything. Okay, they want to completely defund the government in this government spending bill, but doesn't seem like Democrats are that worked up about that portion of it.
Yeah, they should be worked up about both. There's nothing wrong with worked up both. Look, guys, this is our money, right? Every time you see an appropriation, that's our taxpayer money that's going to it. So do I want my taxpayer money going to help the senior citizens who are LGBTQ and who need help with their rent, etc.? Yes, that's exactly what I want it going for, to help the average American, whether they're LGBTQ or not. And these are good organizations that are getting money to people who need that assistance desperately. Do I want that more than I want it going to another $100 billion that is total utter waste and fraud at the Pentagon? Yes, I would much rather have it go all in that direction rather than to the defense contractors. How about the baseball bat analogy? Look, as I said earlier, I don't know what eco-grief counseling is, and you want to fight over that in a standalone bill, no problem, no problem. And I might even agree with you, right? But is it an accident that every other provision is targeting the LGBTQ and black communities? Oh, and Latinos, they want to shut down a Latino museum. No, of course it's not an accident. They're not targeting a single thing that applies to straight people, white people, Christians, nothing, nothing. All the targets are minorities. That's an accident?
Right.
That's not an accident. And so Pocan is not exaggerating, it is not hyperbole. When you drive that kind of hatred towards a community, by the way, the polling numbers for approval of gay marriage have now dipped. I think they lost about 9 points on the national average because they're driving hatred. And yes, sometimes that leads to somebody getting hit with a baseball bat when they come out of a gay bar. And so this is a disastrous route that the Republicans have taken. And Anna's absolutely right too. And while we have to fight 100% on those issues, we also have to fight 100% on the spending cuts, which are massive and affect everyone in the country.
Right. And look, sometimes politicians say the quiet parts out loud. And in this particular case, you have Representatives Andy Biggs and Bob Good, 2 Republicans, saying the quiet parts out loud. What do they really want to do? What's their real objective here? Well, let's watch.
I am not worried about a government shutdown at this point. I think that they'll continue on, and then to try to run it out till December, to be honest with you. But that's my own perspective. I know I'm not speaking for everybody else. Bob, did you want to answer?
I would add to that, we should not fear a government shutdown. Right. Most of what we do up here is bad anyway. Most of what we do up here hurts the American people. When we do stuff to the American people while promising to do things for the American people, essential operations continue.
85%.
85%, as Mr. Biggs has just given me that number, continues. Most of the American people won't even miss if the government is shut down temporarily.
Then why are we even paying for your salary, Bob Good? I mean, if most of what they do is useless and negative, why is the United States taxpayer funding the healthcare and the salary of Republican lawmakers like Andy Biggs and Bob Good, who refuse to do their jobs? I mean, this is their job as congressional lawmakers, to pass legislation to ensure the government is funded. Just because he has this ideology that the federal government is useless, he doesn't like what they do, doesn't mean that he gets to, avoid doing his job.
Yeah, guys, I figured out watching that clip earlier today what I think the Republican strategy is going to be. And that's why I mentioned it earlier in this story. I think that they're going to shut the government down at the end of September. And here's why. They played around with the debt ceiling, but they were never going to do that. And we told you that 100 times while everybody else was doing fake theater. Why? Because if you mess with the debt ceiling, that crashes the stock market.
Yep.
No way their donors would allow that. But if you shut the government down, it actually doesn't crash the stock market. Those are 2 very different things with very different economic results. Shutting the government down could cause like the markets and the economy to be hurt a little bit to a decent amount, which is exactly what the Republicans want. Because it would make their base happy to hurt Biden and hurt the Democrats while they're in charge. But more importantly, it would help their election efforts. So if the economy is doing poorly as you're heading into an election year, and whether it's Trump or anyone else, they could say, oh, Biden screwed up the economy, it's his fault. And it doesn't crash it entirely, so their donors are not furious with them, but it hurts it enough to maybe win the next election. So they're gonna make up an excuse. And my guess is they're gonna shut it down. And having watched that, he's pretty brazen about it. He's like,
he is.
We don't work anyway. What difference does it make? We're all bums and we're all playing theater here. And so, I think watch out. I think they're gonna probably shut it down.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.